morning, everyone. The topic is muscular system. No? So today we will be talking about the muscular system. In nursing, muscular system are very important because there are many uh, activities or nursing responsibilities or duties that will relate later on to your muscular system. No? Especially when you are injecting drugs, which is intramuscular. So, where are the location of these muscles that you are going to inject? There are three most used muscle for intramuscular injection. The deltoid muscle, the gluteal muscle, and also the vastus lateralis. So those muscles are very important for us to memorize and how to measure the site or how to locate the actual site for the intramuscular injection. Okay, so muscles are responsible for all types of body movement, even internal movement. Muscles are responsible, no? We have the skeletal muscle to move our bones. Okay? Muscles that are attached to the bones are called skeletal muscle. So, three basic muscle types, no? Cardiac muscles are the muscles of our heart. So, if you say cardiac, heart, and they are only found in our heart. So, cardiac muscle. Smooth muscles are found in our internal organs, no? Just like our intestines. Okay, so in our even in our eyes, they are also found, no? They have a smooth muscle like the iris, no? So smooth muscles. So three, no? Skeletal, cardiac, smooth muscle. Always remember this one. This is very easy to remember. There are only three basic types of uh, muscle. So later on, if they ask you what are the three types of muscle, very easy, no? So skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle. Okay? So for the skeletal and smooth muscles, they are elongated. Okay? Muscle cells, they have muscle fiber. So remember that these are elongated, these two. Okay? These two are elongated. Contraction and shortening of muscle is due to the movement of microfilaments, and both of them contain microfilaments. So the contraction are shortening of these microfilaments. And all muscles share some terminology. We have the myocardium, if you remember that one, mys, which refer to muscle. Okay? Prefix sarco refers to flesh. Okay, sarco. So these are the prefix that are being used to term muscle, no? So myo, mys, sarco, these are the three prefixes that we use when we use the term muscle. Okay? So these are the muscles, no? Skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, smooth muscle. Okay, so comparison between the skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle. How do you compare this one, no? So, characteristic on the body location, of course, skeletal muscle are attached to the bone or skin, some in the facial muscle. So, if you look at your face, and cardiac muscles are located at the walls of the heart. Okay, so we have the myocardium. Don't forget the myocardium. Myo means muscle. Cardium means heart, muscle of the heart. So, most in the walls, smooth muscles are most in the walls of visceral organs other than the heart, no? And cell type. Okay, if you look at the skeletal muscle, they are single, okay, very long, cylindrical. So, they are cylindrical, like this, no? Cylindrical. Okay? And they have many nucleus, multinucleate, and very obvious striation. Striation means stripes. You can see stripes, no? They are stripes. Okay, striation means stripes. For the cardiac, okay, for the shape and appearance, they are called branching cells or branching chains of cells. Okay, so if you look at the shape of the cell of the cardiac cell, they are letter Y, no? Y cells. So another here, like that. Okay, they are branching cells, and only one nucleus, and they have also striation. They are also having stripes, and one important thing here is the intercalated disc, which join each cell together, no? Okay, so for smooth muscle, it is single, fusiform, and uni or one nucleus and no striation. So one characteristic of this smooth muscle is they don't have striation. They don't have stripes, no? So two have striation, skeletal and cardiac. Two have single nucleus, the cardiac and the smooth. Okay? So that is the difference and the similarities of other muscle, no? For the connective tissue components, okay, for the skeletal muscle we have three: endomysium, perimysium, and epimysium. Okay, for the cardiac muscle we have only endomysium, and for the smooth muscle is endomysium also. Okay? So, regulation of contraction. Of course, skeletal muscle are voluntary if you remember the somatic nervous system, no? The somatic nervous system controls our skeletal muscle. So, this is voluntary. Cardiac is involuntary. You cannot control the contraction of the myocardium. Also, the smooth muscle, you cannot control the contraction of your stomach. Okay? Speed of contraction. This skeletal muscle, because they are voluntary, they could be slow and fast. Okay? You can contract your muscle slowly, like moving your hands, opening and closing. You can make it slowly and you can make it fast. Okay? Because they are voluntary, you can control them, no? Cardiac are slow. They are in rhythm, no? Actually 60 to 100 beats per minute of their contraction. And smooth muscles are very, very slow. Just like your small intestine, large intestine, no? The muscle contracts very, very slow. Rhythmic contraction, skeletal, no, because we don't move our face in rhythm. You are smiling. There's no rhythm, no? You are not walking in rhythm always. And for cardiac, yes. And for the smooth muscle, yes, in some. Okay, like in the esophagus, in the small intestine, there is a rhythmic contraction, even in the urethra or ureter. Okay, so these are the comparison of the skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle. Always remember that the skeletal and the cardiac muscle have striations, no? And also remember that cardiac and smooth muscle are involuntary. Only the skeletal are voluntary. Okay? So let's go now to the skeletal muscle characteristics. Okay, so if you look at the skeletal muscle, no, most are attached by tendons to bones. Okay? So most of our muscle are attached to bones by the tendons. Okay? So cells are multinucleate. If you look at the cells, one nucleus, another nucleus, okay, another nucleus. So there are so many nucleus um, in the skeletal muscle, no? And they are striated, have visible banding. If you look at the inside the muscle fiber, no? So if you look at the muscle fiber, they have stripes, no? They have light band, dark band. So we have dark band, we have light band. So there are striation that you can see. Okay, so if you look at inside the one muscle fiber, you can see this myofibril. Okay, and if you look at the myofibril, they have striation also. Okay, so voluntary, subject to conscious control. Okay, connective tissue wrapping of the skeletal muscles. Okay, so if you look at the skeletal muscle, they are being wrapped. We have three, no, connective tissue that wraps this muscle. So first is the endomysium. Okay, so we have the endomysium. So if you look at the muscle fiber, no, so one muscle fiber is wrapped by endomysium. So this is between fibers. So we have the endomysium here. So that is the first, encloses a single muscle fiber. And then perimysium wraps around a fascicle or bundle of muscle fiber. So if you look at the muscle fiber, they are being grouped together. No? When they are grouped together, they are being enclosed again by this perimysium. Okay, so this is the perimysium. Okay, yeah, perimysium. And epimysium covers the entire skeletal muscle. Okay, so we have the perimysium, may epimysium. This one, it wraps around the entire muscle. Okay, skeletal muscle. And then fascia, the outside of the epimysium. So we have fascia here. This is the fascia. Okay. Um, so if you look at the muscle, no, so sometimes when you eat chicken, no, when you eat chicken, you eat especially the legs, no, you can see the muscle fiber and you can even separate it. So you can see the striation there, and you can also separate one muscle fiber from its muscle fiber, and you can see the connective tissue that is wrapping around this muscle fiber. Okay, so epimysium blends into a connective tissue attachment. So the attachment is called tendons. Okay, this is a cord-like structure. Sometimes when you eat the legs of the chicken, at the end of the muscle, there is collagen fiber, no? The white one, which is gummy. Okay, that is the tendons. Mostly made up of collagen fibers, often cross a joint due to toughness and small size. So at the end of the muscle, there is a collagen fiber that is tough and usually cross a joint. Okay. Aponeurosis, this is if you can see this one on the abdomen. So later on, if we go to the illustration, you can see this one. No? Sheet-like structures attach muscle indirectly to bones, cartilages, or connective tissue coverings. Okay. So sites of muscle attachment, of course, the bones, the cartilage, and the connective tissue covering. So if you look at your nose, no, your nose have cartilage. Your muscle there are being attached. Okay. So let's go now to smooth muscle characteristics. One is they don't have striation, so there's no stripe that you can see. Okay, they are spindle-shaped cells. Okay, so in defining the smooth muscle, this is the best description of the shape of the smooth muscle, no? So spindle-shaped cells, and they have single nucleus. They are involuntary, no conscious control, and found mainly at the walls of the hollow organs like our intestines, no? So we have the intestine, we have the ducts. Okay, we have the, what else that is hollow? We have the urinary tract, urinary tract, urinary. We have the urinary tract. Okay. So cardiac muscle characteristic, they have striation, usually has a single nucleus, branching cells joined to another cell at the intercalated disc. So this is very important, no? Cardiac muscle do not separate to each other because of the intercalated disc that makes them join together. And involuntary found only in the walls of the heart. So these are the cardiac muscle bundles. Okay, functions of the skeletal muscle. First is produce movement. Since the skeletal muscle is connected to our bones, when the muscle contract, it pulls, okay, it pulls the bone so that the bone can move. Okay, remember a muscle do not push, they always pull. Okay, they maintain posture so that we can stand erect. Okay, stabilize joints. Okay, they can, if you stretch your arm, make an angle, you can do that because they are stabilizing joints and generate heat. Okay, so when muscle contracts, they generate heat because they use energy. When energy is used, heat is produced. Okay, let's go now to microscopic anatomy of the skeletal muscle. So if you look inside the muscle fiber, what you can see is this structure. Okay, so sarcolemma is specialized plasma membrane. So this is the plasma membrane of the skeletal muscle, no? Okay, so look at the plasma membrane. Okay? And then we have myofibrils, long organelles inside the muscle cell. So this is now the myofibrils. Okay, remember this is one muscle fiber. Inside the muscle fiber, we have the myofibril. And we have the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So the reticulum of this muscle cell is called sarcoplasmic reticulum. Specialized smooth endoplasmic reticulum, wherein they store their calcium. This is where calcium is stored, no? So the storage of calcium is here. Then later on, you will notice, or you will know that calcium is important ion to make our muscle contract. That's why if you lack calcium also, you have difficulty of moving and you feel fatigue. Okay, so let's go now to a sarcomere, no? Myofibrils are aligned to give distinct bands. We have the I band, okay, we have the A band. The I band is the light band, contains only thin filament. So this is the A band, no? And this is the I band. I, light, if you can see light, no? I, light band. A band, dark band. Okay, so remember that one, no? So if you look at the I band, it contains light band. So they contain thin filaments only. So this is the thin filament, the blue one. So if you look at the I band, there's no thick filament, only thin filament is present. That's why they look lighter. Okay? And then the A band contains the entire length of the thick filament. So this is the entire length of the thick filament. Okay? But okay, so if you look at the illustration, these are the actin or thin filament, no, the blue one, and the thick filament are the red one. Okay, so myofibril or fibril is a complex organelle composed of bundles of myofilament. So actually the this whole thing is called sarcomere, no? This whole thing. Okay, so sarcomere is a contractile unit of a muscle fiber. For example, this is a muscle fiber. Okay. So, in the muscle fiber, we have one sarcomere, another sarcomere, another sarcomere, another sarcomere, another sarcomere. So, they are connected to each other. So, in one sarcomere, this is the composition. Okay? So sarcomere is a unit. So, it's a contractile unit. Once this one contracts, it's shortened. Okay? So, this one also will shorten. This one also will shorten. So, the muscle will shorten when it contracts. Okay? So, organization of the sarcomere. First thing that we should know in the sarcomere is that they contain myofilaments. Okay? And we have two myofilaments. We have thick and we have thin filaments. Thick filaments are called myosin and thin filaments are actin. Actin. So you remember that one. Myosin, actin. So we have myofilament, we have myosin and actin filament. Okay? So for the thick filament or myosin filament, this is composed of protein myosin. That's why it's called myosin filament. Okay, so this is the one, no? This one is the thick filament. Okay, so has ATPase enzymes. Okay, myosin filaments have heads. So they have heads. If you look at this structure, they are called heads, extensions or cross bridges. And myosin and actin overlap somewhat. So if you look at them, they overlap, no? Yan. So this is the ZDis and ZDis, and this is one sarcomere. Okay, this is one sarcomere. So always remember, no, it has an enzyme, ATPase. Okay, and it has heads. Yan. So for the thin filament, actin filaments composed of protein actin. Okay, anchored to the ZDis. So this is the ZDis. So if you look at the thin filament, the blue one, they are anchored here and they are made up of protein actin. Okay? So at rest, with A band, there is a zone that lacks actin filament called either H zone or bare zone. So this one. No? If you look at here, there is a zone that does not contain actin filament. And this zone is very important in the contraction of skeletal muscle. Okay. So later on, we will analyze that one. No? We have the H zone or bare zone. Remember, they are the same. H zone and bare zone, in which they lack actin filament. Okay. Sarcoplasmic reticulum stores and releases calcium. So if you look inside the skeletal muscle cell, there is a storage of calcium. This one. So if the muscle needs to contract, the calcium is released by the sarcoplasmic reticulum so that it will now modify the actin and thin filament to do their action. Okay? It surrounds the myofibril. So this one surrounds the myofibril. Okay. So stimulation and contraction of single skeletal muscle. So there should be excitability, also called responsiveness or irritability. This is ability to receive and respond to stimulus. Okay, so if there is a nerve impulse that is being transmitted, okay, the muscle cells should have the excitability, no? Contractility, ability to shorten when adequate stimulus is received, and extensibility, ability of the muscle to be stretched, and elasticity is the ability of the muscle to recoil and resume resting length. So So the nerve stimulus and action potential. The action potential, I have already explained it to you. No? Action potential will only happen if there is depolarization. If depolarization, meaning if the sodium went inside the cell and potassium went outside the cell, when more sodium is going inside, the condition of the electrical condition of the cell outside and inside changes. So there will be action potential. Okay. Skeletal muscle must be stimulated by a motor neuron. So if this is the motor neuron, no? This is sensory neuron, this is motor neuron. So motor in output coming from the brain going to the skeletal muscle. Yan. So to contract. So there should be a motor output to contract the muscle. So motor unit, one motor neuron and all skeletal muscle cell is stimulated by the neuron. So that is a motor unit. So this is a motor unit, and then they branch to different muscles. They are called motor unit. Okay? Oh, that one. So the nerve stimulus and action potential, we continue this one. So neuromuscular junction is very important to understand here. So coming from the brain, motor output going to our muscle cell, no? If you look at the action terminal, these are the action terminal, the end of the action. Actually, the action terminal or the neuron and the muscle fiber are not totally connected to each other. They are not, no, totally connected to each other. Okay? There is a gap between the action terminal and also the sarcolemma of the muscle fiber. Okay? So we have learned that transmission of nerve impulses doesn't need only neuron, but also it needs the chemical called neurotransmitter. Okay? And the neurotransmitter are located in the action terminal. Okay? So there is a synaptic cleft, a gap between the nerve and the muscle. And the nerve and muscle do not make contact. There's no contact in between them. Okay? Area between nerve and muscle is filled with interstitial fluid. So there's a fluid between them now. Okay. So action potential reaches the action terminal of the motor neuron. For example, no, this is the muscle and this is the motor neuron. When the action potential reaches the end of the action in the action terminal, this action potential now opens up the calcium channel. So action potential reaches the action terminal of the motor neuron. So they reach here, and what will happen is that calcium ion entry causes some synaptic vesicles to release their contents called acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter. No, so when action potential reaches here, what will happen is calcium channels. These are the calcium channels. They will open up, no? So calcium enters the action terminal. So the calcium will now enter. Remember, this is in interstitial fluid. So they will enter here. Okay? Upon entry of the calcium there, so upon entry of the calcium there, it will now make this vesicle, no? It will now make this vesicle to attach to the sarcolemma of the, to attach to the uh, membrane of the action terminal and release their acetylcholine or neurotransmitter. So acetylcholine diffuses across the synaptic cleft and binds to the receptor in the sarcolemma. So, calcium and causes some synaptic vesicle to release their contents, the acetylcholine and neurotransmitter by exocytosis. So, calcium will now make this vesicle to fuse and release the neurotransmitter. Okay? And the neurotransmitter for skeletal muscle is called acetylcholine. Okay, remember this one. This one is coming out in the board, no? Acetylcholine. Okay, sodium rushes into the cell, generating an action potential, and potassium leaves the cell. So, once this acetylcholine, okay, diffuse in the cleft, no? This now will attach to the receptor of the sarcolemma, no? The receptor here, okay, and causes the permeability of the sarcolemma to sodium, and sodium now will enter the muscle cell and potassium will get out. Okay, so sodium rushes into the cell generating an action potential and potassium leaves the cell. Once started, muscle contraction cannot be stopped. Okay, so if you look at here, no, in the synaptic cleft, no, in the cleft. So if you look at here, this is now the uh, ion channels in the sarcolemma, no. So these ion channels now will open for the sodium and potassium, no. Acetylcholine binds to the channel to acetylcholine binds and channels open that allow simultaneous passage of sodium into the muscle fiber and potassium out of the muscle fiber. More sodium ions enter than potassium ions leave, and this produces a local change in the electrical condition of the membrane called depolarization, which eventually leads to action potential. Okay, so this is now the ion channel. So when neurotransmitter is released from the action terminal, it binds to the receptors in the sarcolemma, causing now these ion channels to open for sodium and potassium. So sodium goes in, potassium goes out, but more sodium goes in than potassium goes out, changing now the electrical condition inside the cell. So this now becomes positive and outside becomes negative, causing now depolarization. Okay, so if there is now depolarization, an action potential happens. So when action potential happens, next is the acetylcholine effects are ended by its breakdown in the synaptic cleft by an enzyme called acetylcholinesterase. So the acetylcholine are being deactivated by these enzymes after they are being used. So once this one opens, they will now stop. Okay? Okay, let's go now to the sliding filament theory of muscle contraction. So this is now your assignment or your assignment in or your laboratory to create a concept map about the mechanism of muscle contraction. Okay, so let us now discuss this one, no? Time na ba? May 15 minutes pa. So, activation by the nerve causes myosin heads or cross bridges to attach to the binding site of the thin filament. So, when the impulse or there is action potential inside now your sarcomere, okay, what will happen? So, there will be changes in the myosin and actin. So, in the thin filament and the thick filament. Myosin heads then bind to the next site of the thin filament and pull them towards the center of the sarcomere. Okay, so there will be changes inside the sarcomere. especially with the thin filament and the thick filament. So this continued action causes sliding of the myosin along the actin. The result is muscle is shortened. So how does the muscle do this? Okay. So if you look at this one, no, in this relaxed mode. Okay, if you look at the thin filament, there's no thin filament at the H zone, no, or bare zone in the relaxed mode. The thin filament is only here, no. They are only located here in the I band. Okay, and we have the thick filament here. And if you look at the heads of the thick filament, they are located here. Okay, so if this one, if action potential is reached, these thin filaments will be modified and thick filament will be modified. Okay, making this thick filament to slide this thin filament towards the center. And this muscle or sarcomere now shorten. So liliit siya, no? Okay, so let us go further inside, no? So this is now your thin filament. In relaxed muscle cell, the regulatory proteins forming part of the actin myofilaments prevent myosin binding. So this one does not bind to the actin. So if this is myosin in relaxed mode, okay, this thin filament prevent myosin binding. So there's no binding. And look at the direction of our heads. Okay? It's like this, no? So this is the myosin and this is the thin filament. Okay? So when an action potential sweeps along the sarcolemma or the skin or the membrane and a muscle cell is excited, calcium ions are released from the intercellular storage area, which is the sac of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So inside the sac of the sarcoplasmic reticulum, Ca now will be released. So what will be the role of the Ca with this myosin and the actin? Remember, an impulse entered the myofibril, no? And it entered the sarcomere. Once it entered the sarcomere, there will be changes in these two structure inside the sarcomere. Okay? So calcium now will modify them. Okay? In flood of calcium acts as a final trigger for contraction because the calcium binds to the regulatory proteins on the actin. So if you look at the actin, there is a regulatory protein here, no? These are the regulatory protein. So what this regulatory protein do when they are bind with the calcium? So this calcium binds to them and change the shape of the actin. Okay? So the protein undergo change in both their shape and their position on the thin filaments. This action exposes myosin binding site. So they create the myosin binding site. So there will be now myosin binding site on the actin, no? To which the myosin head can attach. And the myosin heads immediately begin seeking out in binding site. So when this is being modified by the calcium, when the calcium bind to the protein, no, it now exposes the binding site of the thick filament heads, no. So they will now seek to the binding site. Gagalaw ito, no. They will move and seek for the binding site. Okay. Now, the free myosin heads are cocked. So they lock on the binding site. Okay. So they go to the binding site and they are locked now. Okay. Myosin attachment to actin springs the trap. okay, causing the myosin heads to snap. So they will now snap towards the center of the sarcomere. When this happens, the thin filaments are slightly pulled towards the center. So they will now move towards the center. Okay? So ATP provides energy needed to release and recock its myosin head so that it is ready to attach to binding site farther along the thin filament. So they will be released by the use of ATP and to bind them again on the farther side. Okay? So when ATP ends and calcium ions are returned to SR or sarcoplasmic reticulum storage area, the regulatory protein resume their original shape and position. So when they are going back to the resting phase, okay, the calcium now will get out and go back to the storage area. Okay, and the thin filaments uh, go to its original position and change shape again. Okay, so again, black myosin binding to the thin filaments. As a result, the muscle cell relaxes and settles back to its original length. So it will now relax and proceed to its original length. That is what is happening, no? So contraction of skeletal muscle. Muscle fiber contraction is all or none. So once one muscle contract, every body will contract. In that part, no? Within a skeletal muscle, not all fibers may be stimulated during the same interval. Okay? Different combination of muscle fiber contraction may give different responses. And graded responses is different degrees of skeletal muscle shortening. Okay? So, meron pa tayong oras, no? So, graded responses can be produced by changing, no, the frequency of muscle stimulation, the number of muscle cells being stimulated on one time. Okay. Meron tayong tinatawag na twitch. Sometimes you experience this one, no? Your muscle is moving involuntarily, no? Single brief contraction, not a normal muscle function. So, these are not normal function. Okay? This is a twitch. Another one is summing of contraction. One contraction is immediately followed by another contraction. Okay? So, the muscle does not completely return to a resting state due to more frequent stimulation. Okay? This is called summing of contraction. Okay? The effects are added. Contract, relax, contract, relax. Okay, so this one is unfused tetanus or incomplete contraction. Some relaxation occurs between contraction, but nerve stimuli arrive at even faster rate than during summing of contraction. Okay, unless the muscle contraction is smooth and sustained, it is said to be unfused tetanus. So another one is the fused tetanus, no, or complete contraction. No evidence of relaxation before the following contraction. So if there's no relaxation, this is fused or complete tetanus. Frequency of stimulation does not allow for relaxation between contraction, and the result is smooth and sustained muscle contraction. Okay, muscle respond to strong stimuli. Muscle force depends upon the fiber or depends upon the number of the fiber that is being stimulated. More fibers contracting results in a greater muscle tension. Okay, so muscles can continue to contract unless they run out of energy. Yan. So you will feel fatigue if you don't have energy already. Okay, next discussion would be about the energy for muscle contraction. So, where do we get energy for the muscle to contract? Okay, so initially, what we use is the stored energy or ATP for energy. So, this stored energy is inside the muscle, no? So, we have ATP bonds are broken to release energy, and it lasts only for 4 to 6 seconds worth of ATP are stored inside our muscles. Okay, so after this initial time, after using this 4 to 6 seconds worth of ATP, other pathways must be utilized to produce ATP. So we use another pathways. And what are those? No? First is what we call the direct phosphorylation of ADP by creatinine phosphate. So, what is the meaning of this one? So, after using the ATP, okay, so the ATP now will become ADP. So, what will the body do is to directly use the creatinine phosphate. Okay. CP is a highly energy molecule, no? A high energy molecule. After ATP is depleted, ADP is left. So when ADP is left, CP transfer a phosphate group to ADP to generate ATP. So what will happen is that when ADP is produced after using ATP, so the ATP now is combined with CP or creatinine phosphate. And when this phosphate join the ADP, it will now become ATP. Okay? So, what is left is creatinine. Okay, so CP supplies are exhausted in less than 15 seconds. So, this is longer now. No? So, a while ago, it's 4 to 6 seconds. Now, this one is 15 seconds. And about 1 ATP is created per CP molecules. Okay, so I repeat, no? So, direct phosphorylation of ADP by creatinine phosphate. So, once ATP is being utilized, it turns into ADP, okay, adenosine diphosphate. So, to make another ATP again, CP will be utilized, okay. So, CP will now transfer its phosphate to ADP, they become adenosine triphosphate. So, what is left is creatinine. Okay, so this is what is happening. No? So, after using our stored energy, we will now utilize the uh, direct phosphorylation of ADP. Okay, so there is a direct by using our CP molecules. Okay, so CP molecules now will join the ADP to turn it into ATP again. Okay, and what is produced is creatinine. Okay. So next to this, another one source of energy is this aerobic respiration. Okay, so we have the aerobic respiration. Okay, so during our discussion in the internal respiration, no, oxygen is combined with glucose to become ATP. So glucose is broken down to carbon dioxide and water, releasing about 32 ATP. So this is longer, no? And this is 32 ATP. Okay? A series of metabolic pathways occur in the mitochondria. So when the this is a slower reaction that requires continuous oxygen and carbon dioxide and water are produced. So during internal respiration, when we convert glucose into energy, it should be combined with oxygen, and the product will be carbon dioxide water, and ATP. No? So in this illustration, energy source which is glucose converted to pyruvic acid, free fatty acid from adipose tissue, and amino acids from protein are being catabolized inside the mitochondria. No? So glucose, glycogen breakdown of delivered from blood, no, in the form of pyruvic acid, or it is converted to pyruvic acid, and fatty acid and amino acid, okay, are being metabolized inside or catabolized inside our mitochondria to produce 32 ATP, water, and carbon dioxide. So this aerobic respiration is one or the biggest source of our energy because it produces ATP, no? It's net gain per glucose. Okay, so but here oxygen use is required. Okay. Another one is the anaerobic glycolysis. So without the use of oxygen, without the use of oxygen, we can still create an energy, no? So there is still um, an energy that can be produced through anaerobic glycolysis, okay, and lactic acid formation. So reaction that breaks down glucose without oxygen is called the anaerobic glycolysis. So meaning no oxygen, anaerobic. Okay, glucose is broken down to pyruvic acid after making it as pyruvic acid to produce about 2 ATP. Then pyruvic acid is converted to lactic acid. Okay, this reaction is not efficient, but it is fast. Okay, so this is fast. Huge amounts of glucose are needed, and lactic acid produces muscle fatigue. So the irony here is lactic acid can produce muscle fatigue. If muscle experience fatigue, they cannot contract anymore. Okay, so what is muscle fatigue and oxygen deficient? Okay, when a muscle is fatigued, it is unable to contract even with the stimulus. So even there's a stimulus, muscle cannot already contract. Okay, common cause of muscle fatigue is oxygen depth or deficit. No, so oxygen must be repaid to tissue to remove the oxygen deficit. So before uh, to remove this muscle fatigue, there should be oxygen that is being given or oxygen that is repaid to our tissue. Okay, oxygen is required to get rid of accumulated lactic acid. So to get rid of this lactic acid that is accumulated in the muscle, we need to have oxygen. Okay, so increasing acidity from lactic acid and lack of ATP will now cause muscle to contract less. Okay, so muscle cannot contract in the presence of this. They can contract, but if too much lactic acid and lack of ATP, it will now contract less. Okay, so there are two types of muscle contraction. We have the isotonic contraction and isometric contraction. Okay, so in the isotonic contraction, myofilaments are able to slide past each other during contraction. So there is sliding of the myofilaments. The muscle shortens and movement occurs. Example is the bending the knee, rotating the arm. Okay, so later on we will explain this one. There will be illustration. So isometric contraction is a tension in the muscles increases, but the muscle is unable to shorten and produce movement. Okay, example of this is push against a wall with a bent elbows. Okay, so like this, no? This is isometric. Okay, look at this. Okay, so a tension is given to the muscle, or tension increases, muscle length remains. So the muscle length remains, but tension increases. Okay, the same on. Okay, important in maintaining posture. So when you maintain posture, okay, and also when you are carrying, okay, isotonic, tension remains the same, muscle shorten, used in movements, just like this, no? So tension remains the same, muscle shorten, okay, and used in movement. Yeah. So both types are used in most body action. Okay, that is isotonic and isometric. Okay, for this one, it is moving. For this one, it is not moving, stationary, but there is a tension in muscle, or tension increases. Just like when you are carrying a pail of water and you are not shortening your muscle, no? Or you are not flexing your muscle, but you are carrying the pail of water, no, which is full. So there is still a tension increases, and muscle length remains, no? So there is no movement. So muscle tone. What is muscle tone? Actually, to define muscle tone, it is a tension in a muscle at rest. Oh, how can a muscle have tension at rest? So that is a muscle tone, no? So some fibers are contracted even in relaxed muscle. Okay, so different fibers contract at different times to provide muscle tone and to be constantly ready. To what? Okay, appropriate muscle tone enables our bodies to quickly respond to a stretch. Okay. For example, no, if this is your arm, no, yan, yan. Somebody pull your arm and straighten your arm. So what would the body do is to, why is there a muscle tone that is present on this, is to prevent us from injury. So when they straighten your arm, your muscle is able to immediately react so that you prevent injury, no? Ayan. So kung i-straight nila yung kamay mo, may nag-straight ng kamay mo para hindi siya ma-hyperextend, you react to that one, no? To prevent injury. Okay, so what are the effects of exercise on the muscle? Okay, so first, exercise increases muscle size, strength, and endurance. Okay, for the endurance, it is aerobic. So if you want to have a good endurance, you do aerobic exercise like biking, jogging, walking. This one will result into a stronger, more flexible muscles with greater resistance to fatigue. So this is for endurance. Okay, makes the body metabolism more efficient and improves digestion and coordination. Okay, but if you want to become uh, stronger and you become more bigger, no, you do resistance exercise, just like weightlifting, no. Weightlifting, this one will increases muscle size and strength, but it doesn't increases endurance. Okay, so for endurance, this is what you are going to do. Okay. Like that. So if you are comparing a marathon, no, player against weightlifter, if you look at their body, this is big, no? This is somewhat slim, but this is this have more endurance. This has more strength. Okay? So, 5 golden rules of skeletal muscle activity. So, what are the 5 golden rules of muscle activity? Okay, so with few exceptions, all skeletal muscle must cross at least one joint. So, this is the rule, no? So, if this is the joint, no? If you look at the muscle, skeletal muscle, from here to here, they crosses one joint. Okay? A typically, the bulk of the skeletal muscle lines proximal to the cross joints. Okay, sabi niya proximal. It says proximal. The bulk of skeletal muscle. So, this is the skeletal muscle, no? If you say proximal, so this is proximal, this is distal. Okay, because this is nearer to the trunk. So, the origin, okay, so the bulk of the skeletal muscle lies proximal to the joint cross. So, this one should be proximal to the joint cross. No, so this is the cross. So, the bulk of the muscle must be proximal. Okay? So, if this is the insertion, this is the origin. The origin should be proximal to the insertion. Okay, so all skeletal muscle have at least two attachment, the origin and the insertion. So, this is the origin and this is the insertion. Okay, the skeletal muscle can only pull and never push. So, if you notice here, no, since they cross a joint, when this uh, muscle contract, it will pull. Okay, it will pull this ulna towards the upper arm. Okay, and it will never push. When it relaxes, another muscle connected at the back will now contract. Okay, to pull this one. So they never push. Okay, so this is a golden rule that you should remember. No, muscle never push. They always pull. Okay. During contraction, a skeletal muscle insertion moves towards the origin. Okay, so during contraction, a skeletal muscle insertion moves towards the origin. So this is what I am talking about. So when this one contract, okay, this insertion now moves to the origin. Okay. So let's go now to muscle and body movements. Actually, this is part of your worksheet, no? Movement is attained due to skeletal or due to a muscle moving an attached bone. So if muscle is attached to a bone and this one contract, it creates movement. Muscles are attached to at least two joints, the origin and the insertion. Attachment to a movable bone and attachment to an immovable bone. Okay? So, first is flexion. Okay, so flexion is very easy. No? So, when you move your knees with this angle, you actually flex your knees or your legs. I should say legs. So, this is flexion. Okay? This is flexion. Okay? So, when you bend your head down, this is also flexion. Okay? So decreases the angle of the joint. Okay? Brings two bones closer together. So brings two bones closer together. Okay? So, typical of bending hinge joints like knee and elbow, or ball and socket joints like the hip. So, that is flexion. Okay? Actually, in your nursing during delivery, if you will talk about mechanisms of labor, one mechanism of labor or mechanisms of labor is flexion. No, when the baby is inside the womb, the baby flex the head, okay, towards the chin, so that the occiput will be the one coming out first. Okay, so that is flexion, and you can also flex your arm now. Next is extension. Okay, extension is the opposite of flexion. This one increases the angle between two bones, typically of straightening elbow or knee, and extension deploy a 180 degrees. Okay, so if it is beyond 180 degrees, it is now called hyperextension. Okay, for our head, when you straighten like this, straight 180 degrees, no, it is the extension. So when your head is straight up, it is the extension. Okay, when your head is flexed down anteriorly, it's flexion. And when you put your head, tilt your head backward, it is now called hyperextension. Okay, so it is hyperextension. So this one is extension. When she bow down, flexion, and when she put her head backward, it is hyperextension. Okay, so this is extension. So when she will straighten her legs, going here to be straight, it will be extension. Okay. It's very easy, no? So flexion, extension, hyperextend. Okay. So too much degree, no? Hyperextend. Now for the rotation. Okay, your point of reference here is the common in ball and socket joints, no? So movement of a bone around its longitudinal axis, that is rotation. No need to rotate your head. Just put your face at the left and the right. I don't know if you can put it on your back. So the left and the right, and that is called rotation already. Okay. Also with your feet, no, or your foot, you just put your foot at the side and at the middle. Okay, side and the middle, or that is already rotation. Okay. Example is when you move the atlas around the dens of axis, or shake your head. No. Okay. That's rotation. Next is abduction. Okay, so abduction is talking about the, if your code here is abduction. So here is add. So you move your arms towards your body is called abduction. Opposite of the abduction is movement of a limb towards the midline. So abduction is movement of the limb away from the midline. So if this is your midline, when you put your arm away, it is called abduction. And if you put your arm towards the midline, it is called now the adduction. So adduction, add, going towards the midline. Okay, so that's another movement. Another movement is circumduction. Circumduction is like this, no? Circular movement of the arm or the legs. Okay, so combination of flexion, extension, abduction, and adduction. So if you try this one, rotate your arm and also flexing and extending your arm by circular motion, it is already called circumduction. Okay? And they are common in ball and socket joints. So dorsiflexion. What is dorsiflexion? So dorsiflexion, you put your foot on the floor, no? And then lifting the foot so that the superior surface approaches the shin, okay? Or towards the dorsum. Kasta. Okay, so it's like this, no? That's dorsiflexion. Plantar flexion. Plant. Okay, you are planting your foot or two, no? So depressing the foot, pointing the toes, okay, or planting the foot towards the sole. So that is plantar flexion, dorsiflexion. Okay, so eversion, it's you're talking about the sole now, no? And eversion, you are talking about the sole, no? So inversion, turning the sole of the foot medially at the center. Okay, eversion is turning the sole foot lateral at the side. Okay, so that is now inversion and eversion. Okay, supination. I hope you know what is supine, no? Supine. Nakaibda, I don't know what is the Ilocano of supine. Okay, so forearm rotates laterally, so palm faces anteriorly. Okay, so this is supination. Nakadata da imam, no? So radius and ulna are parallel. So if you look at the radius and ulna, they are parallel to each other, no? And this one is facing up. Okay, the palm is facing up. Pronation is nakapaalab. Okay. Forearm rotates medially, so palm faces posteriorly. Okay, and radius and ulna cross each other like an X. If you look at the radius and ulna, they cross each other. Okay, and then forearm rotates medially, so this one goes medially. Okay, yeah. So the palm faces posteriorly. So the palm is facing posteriorly. So supination and pronation. Okay, agdata ken nakadata ken nakapaalab. Okay, tiima. And if you look at the radius and ulna, okay, so this is now the radius and this is now the ulna. So this is your um, radius, this is your ulna. Okay, opposition. Okay, so opposition, move thumb to touch the tip of the other fingers on the same hand, just like making a letter on, and that is now your opposition. Okay, so these are special movements. Now let's go to the types of muscles. Okay, so our body has so many muscles, no? And there are many types of muscle. We don't need to memorize all of them. Later on, we will just go over what is very important in nursing, no? So actually, muscles are being studied by physical therapists and also medicine. So they are specializing in skeletal muscle. So types of muscle. We have prime mover. If you say prime, it's the number one, no? Prime mover, muscles with the major responsibility for certain movement. So, prime mover. Okay, prime mover, major. Okay, movement. Antagonist means muscle that opposes or reverses the prime mover. Okay, synergies, muscle that aids prime mover. So this is the friend of prime mover. This is the enemy of the prime mover, no? So fixator. Okay, so if you say fixator, they stabilize the origin of the prime mover. Okay, so fixator. So these are the types of our muscle, no? Yeah. Okay, so prime mover. Okay, so they major responsibility for a certain movement. Antagonist is contra to the prime mover that opposes and reverses the movement of the prime. And synergist is the friend of the prime mover, okay, that aids a prime mover in the movement and helps prevent rotation. And fixator, the one that stabilizes the origin of the prime mover. Okay, so those are the types. So these are the examples, no? You should you just read them. Okay. So how do we name skeletal muscle? So first, when you name skeletal muscle is by direction, no, of the muscle fiber. So rectus is straight. So when you hear rectus, meaning the muscle is straight. Okay. By relative size of the muscle, we have the maximus and minimus. Okay. So maximus is the largest. Yeah. By location of the muscle. Okay. Temporalis. Of course, you know already what is this one, no? Temporal bone. Number of origins. So if you have 3 origins, tricep. If you have 2 origins, biceps. Okay. By location of the skeletal or by location of the muscles origin and insertion. We have the sterno, which is sternum. By shape of the muscle, deltoid, which is triangular. By action of the muscle, flexor and extensor. The one that extend, the one that flex. Okay, so these are different types of muscle also. But let's move on. So let us see, no? For the head and neck muscle, so these are not too much important in nursing, no? Uh, if there are only accident, that is a accident and damage the muscle on the face. That's the time that we need them, no? So frontalis, of course, you know already, no? This one raises the eyebrow. Orbicularis, oculi, closes the eyes. Okay. Basta orbicularis. Eyes squints, blinks, and winks. Orbicularis oris closes the mouth and protrudes the lips. Okay. And buccinator flattens the cheek and the chews. Zygomatic raises the corners of our mouth. Okay, so these are the facial muscles. Okay, for the mouth, okay, chewing muscles. First is the masseter. Masseter, this one closes the jaw and elevates the mandible. Okay, so masseter. So this is the masseter, no? Okay, temporalis, synergies of the masseter jaw closes. Okay, or closes the jaw. Ayan. Okay, so this one. Mm. Neck muscles. Okay, first is platysma. Okay, pulls the corners of the mouth inferiorly. And sternocleidomastoid flexes the neck and rotates the head. Okay, so these are not mostly talk about in nursing. Uh, Here, this one is one of the most talk about, no, because during injection, no, IM, intramuscular injection, one of the site is this deltoid muscle. Okay, so anterior muscles, muscles of the trunk and shoulder and arms. So we have the pectoris major. Also, this one is very important, no? Pectoris major. And why? Because there are some of breast cancer wherein they are going to remove the breast, including the pecto pectoralis major, because the cancer cell already invade or metastasize on this part of the muscle of the chest, so they have to remove this one. Okay, so they have the inability or difficulty of flexing their arms or raising their arms after the operation. Okay, so this is very important, no? So deltoid and also pectoralis muscle. So these are very important, no? So bicep, bicep brachialis. Okay. So brachioradialis. So what is very important here is the deltoid, no? And the pectoralis major. So external intercostal muscle raise the rib cage during inhalation. So internal intercostal muscle depresses the rib cage to move air out of the lungs when exhaled forcibly. So these are also important, no? The external intercostal muscle and internal costal muscle. When our patient is suffering from difficulty of breathing, we will talk about this muscle, no? So muscles of the abdominal girdle. So we are still in the trunk, no? So this is the abdominal girdle. Ayan. Okay. So this is not too much talk about also. Okay, so rectus abdominis. If you say rectus is straight, no? Flexes vertebral column and compresses abdominal contents. Like for defecation, childbirth, and forced breathing, no? So this one. Okay. External oblique. Okay. Flex vertebral column, rotate the trunk, and bend it laterally. Okay, so where is the external oblique? So we can laterally move our body side to side. Okay. Internal oblique, flex vertebral column. Okay, rotate the trunk and bend it laterally. So almost the same with this external oblique, no, and internal oblique. They have the same function. And transversus abdominis compresses abdominal contents. Okay, so this one. So if you look at this in our abdomen, we have three layers, no? Okay, posterior muscles. Okay, so trapezius elevates and depresses and adducts and stabilize the scapula. So if this is the scapula, no, they are the one doing it. Latissimus dorsi extend and adducts the humerus. Okay, so this is the humerus, no? This the humerus. This one. Erector spine or back extension. Okay? And then quadratus lumborum flexes the spine, it flexes the spine laterally. And deltoid for arm abduction. So the most important here is the deltoid again for injection of intramuscular. So look at your muscle at your shoulder, no, which is triangular in shape. That is deltoid. Okay. So site for IM. Okay, so muscles that arise from the shoulder girdle and cross the shoulder joint to insert into the humerus includes, okay, pectoralis major, latissimus dorsi, and deltoid. Okay. So upper limb, no? Bicep, brachii, supinates forearm and flex elbow. Okay, this one. Supinates forearm and flexes the elbow. Brachialis. Okay, so elbow flexion. Tricep brachii. Elbow extension. Okay, antagonist to the bicep brachii. Okay, so let us go on the most important muscle, no? Because this is just what you are going to memorize. But you don't need to memorize them. What is important is what are the site for injection for us nursing, no? So for this, no, muscles causing movement at the hip joint, gluteus maximus. Okay, so this is the gluteus maximus, the buttocks, no, gluteus medius. Okay, so this is another important for injection. Okay, so this is the site for injection. Okay, at your buttocks, no, for IM. Okay, for the deltoid, if the amount of drug is um, less than or equal to 2 ml, no, you use the deltoid muscle. But if it is more than 2 ml, you use now the gluteus medius. Ayan. You use this one. Okay, so iliopsoas, this one is used for hip flexion, keeps the upper body from falling backward when standing erect. So this one is also being examined, no? This one is also very important. Okay? Why? Because this one also is being assessed when you are having appendicitis. Okay? So if you are having appendicitis, they will assess this muscle if you cannot, if you have pain when you are moving this muscle. Okay? So abductor muscle. So this one abduct the thighs. So here, no, they illustrate where is the proper, no, proper site for intramuscular injection when we are using this gluteus medius. Okay, so if the question is being asked, where is the site for IM here in the buttocks? The accurate, okay, site is this one, because there are two gluteus here, no, maximus and medius. The exact site is the gluteus medius. Okay, so here. So what they are going to do is to measure this one, no? Here, no? and then inject it here. So the best way to inject it here is put your hand here, no? Your index finger and your thumb here, no? At this point, you can now inject your drugs, IM. It's good if I can illustrate, no? I can demonstrate it. So during your second year, no, when you are going to study on how to administer drug by IM in the gluteus medius, you will have a demonstration on how to do it. Okay? What is the reason why that we are going to inject it here? Why not here? Okay? We inject it here to prevent hitting the sciatic nerve because the sciatic nerve cross along this area. So if you are not able to determine the exact site and you just inject here, maybe you can hit the sciatic nerve and it could cause paralyze. Okay? Paralyze or no more sensation of the leg, no? That's why the best site for IM injection in the buttocks is the gluteus medius. Okay? So these are the muscles of the thigh. Okay? So another important here is this one, vastus lateralis. This is also a site for intramuscular injection. Okay? Muscles of the lower limb. Muscles causing movement at the knee joint. Okay, hamstring group. We have the thigh extension and knee flexion. Okay, so we have bicep femoris, semimembranosus, semitendinosus. Okay, so this one. Okay, we have sartorius, quadriceps groups that extends the knee. We have the rectus femoris and vastus muscles, which are three, no? So the vastus muscles. Okay, so we have this one, no? Yeah. So another important site for injection is this vastus lateralis. Okay, during your newborn care, you will inject, okay, Hepa B, vitamin K. Remember, your patient is newborn. The site for IM injection is the vastus lateralis. So you are going to inject here the Hepa B vaccine or the vitamin K injection here. Okay? So don't forget the site. What is the muscle? That is vastus lateralis. Okay, so muscle causing movement at the ankle and foot. We have tibialis anterior for dorsiflex for foot inversion, extensor digitorum longus, toe extension and dorsiflexion of the foot. We have the fibularis muscles for plantar flexion and foot eversion. Okay? And soleus for plantar flexion. Okay, so here, a summary, no, for nursing so that we cannot forget it, no. So if you are administering in an adult, which is less than 2 ml, you use the deltoid muscle. Okay? It's IM, intramuscular injection. If you say intramuscular injection, actually you are going to inject the whole needle, no? Okay, so that it will go to the intramuscular. Okay? So another one is gluteus medius. Okay, so this is the safest area. Gluteus medius here. Okay? So this is your iliac crest and your posterior iliac spine. Okay? So measure it there and here. Okay? And you can find the location of gluteus medius here. And this is the gluteus maximus and this is the sciatic nerve. Again, why do we inject the drug on the buttocks on the gluteus medius, not in the gluteus maximus, to prevent hitting the sciatic nerve? Another one is vastus lateralis. Okay, so here, if your patient is a child, okay, or newborn, if the dose is too big, okay, or too large, maybe more than 2 ml, you may also use this vastus lateralis. But the newborn, when you do intramuscular, it is done through vastus lateralis.